On this episode of the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast, I sit down with Pastor Carl Dixon from Calvary Chapel Sarasota Florida. He's going to share with us some of his secrets to success and the importance of preparing the pastor for the work of church planting. There is a lot of wisdom here, so if you can get your notebook out, you're going to want to jot some of these things down for sure. The Cultivate Church Planting Podcast is part of CGN Media, a podcast network that points to Christ. Check out cgnmedia.org for more great shows and ways to support the ministry. Let's go. All right. Well, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. And today I'm here with a very special guest and someone who's local here in the Bradenton, Sarasota area, and that is Pastor Carl Dixon. And I've known Carl for, it's been a long time.
Yeah, it has.
Well, we first met, I think we first met in Sudan.
Yeah, and actually right in Kampala.
Okay, yep, yeah, in Kampala. So we, our family lived in East Africa and Uganda, and Pastor Carl and a team would come over pretty much every year, every other year, and you would leave some of the teams in Kampala, which was a more established kind of civilized, I guess, civilized place, and then you and a few other pastors would go up to Sudan with far-reaching ministries and do the chaplaincy training.
Yes, yeah. We did that for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so. Yeah,
that's it. And when people are listening, they don't, it's kind of hard to imagine, but just imagine a really, really hot desert place with, back when you started going, there was bombers flying.
Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, one of the Bible studies I was doing with the chaplains, all of them had been in the Army. They've all been either stabbed or shot, and they're very young. And I'm teaching, and all of a sudden, I heard something sounded like a chainsaw to me. They disappeared. They ran away from me right in the middle of my teaching as fast as they could. And I'm watching. I have no idea. And I said, "What's wrong?" And they've got this accent that I can't do, but they said, Pastor Carl, come quick. Bomb shelter, come quick." And so I ran to the bomb shelter and got down, and it was an Antonov coming over to drop bombs. It wasn't a chainsaw. But it's interesting, something that happened. I like to tell this story because what happened was when I got out of there, I panicked. Now, that's not, I've been a police officer. I've been in the Navy. Mm-hmm. I panicked, and I realized that I was in a war zone, and I couldn't leave. I couldn't say, "I don't like this anymore." Yeah, you couldn't just.
You can't turn off the TV if you're getting scared of the
That's right.
movie that's on.
And it surprised me, and these young guys came along beside me and laid hands on me and prayed for me, and I was never afraid again. Yeah, it was really amazingly comforting to have that experience. And it also helped them. They saw me not as some white guy from America, but they saw me as one of them. They've been through that kind of fear.
That's right. Yeah, and, well, that's amazing. And what people don't realize about the mission field and even mission trips is, God often does a lot of miraculous things over on the mission field that we don't get to see or experience here in the U.S. But in cases like that, I mean, I'm sure it was life-changing. Well, it was. And you went back the next year, so it must have.
And the next and the next. But it was, I said when we started the church in Sarasota, I said that I would never go on the mission field because it didn't make any sense to me to go to some place where I don't speak the language and I have to speak and somebody else speak. And I said, I'll just send a transcript if they want to read it. That's fine with me. Yeah. And then if anybody knows Wes, he bullied me.
That's Wes Bentley, Far Reaching Ministries.
He bullied me into going, and we had to sign all these papers. And I like to tell people the papers basically said, "You're probably going to be killed, and we're not going to bring your body back."
Yep.
And it changed the whole church. Because from that time on, we now have missions all over the world. We have a major mission agency out of our church that sends out hundreds of missionaries. And I've been to the South Sudan the most, but I've been to lots of other places too. And we have constant teams going out to encourage the missionaries.
Yep.
And I tell the people in the church that some churches teach you only have to know Jesus to become a Christian. We don't believe that. And it's funny when I say it, because I'm looking at the people and some of them look at each other. I said, what we believe is that you have to know Jesus and you have to have a passport.
Yeah, well, that's great. You have to know Jesus. You have to have a passport.
Yeah.
Well, Carl, you're here today to talk about not only church planting, but I've asked you here to talk about more of the pastoral side of the church plant, because you are I would call you a pastor to pastors. You came to a church planting roundtable we had here and shared with the group. And there were several that shared, myself included, but everybody hands down said, we loved what Carl had to share about basically preparing the pastor for ministry. Before you talk a little bit about that, you have planted a church in Sarasota, the one that you are currently pastoring.
Yes.
Which I'm trying to model, or not model, but follow that example, because I've always planted churches, then left. Planted a church, then left. Mm-hmm. Stay for 3 years, stay for 5 years, leave, go plant another one. And that's okay. That's a model of church planting. But as I've gotten older, I feel like, it's hard work to plant a church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd like to stay and, put down roots and see the fruit develop. And you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording here about what's going on in your church there. And you planted in what year was it? 87, 1987?
86 or 87.
86
yeah.
or 87, yeah. And you were just talking about, the fruit of the church is growing still. The midweek studies are happening. You built a youth center.
Yep.
And all that. So, and it's really a blessing to the community. And for those who don't know, Pastor Carl is a Calvary Chapel pastor, teaching verse by verse through the Bible. You weren't always a Calvary Chapel guy though, were you?
No.
Okay. First of all, how did you plant the church? Just a little summary about that, and then how did you get connected to Calvary Chapel?
I was actually a pastor, an associate pastor in a large Baptist church. And I have gone to that church. I was a stockbroker for a lot of years. I moved to America to start a brokerage firm with some other men. And it was very successful, and we sold it. And the pastor of the church I was going to, I was doing all discipleship ministry there, asked if I would come on board. And so I did come on board in the church. I had never been in a denomination before. I'd always been in a church that's sort of like the Calvary Chapel movement type independent church, taught verse by verse.
Like a non-denominational kind of
non-denominational church. And I got in a lot of trouble because I didn't understand the politics of denominations. I still don't, but as a result, the pastor asked to go for a walk with me one day, and we were doing a Bible study in the church during Sunday school hour that had become way over 100 people. But we were doing, now you have to understand, this is back in the 1980s, the early 80s. We were using guitars instead of piano and organ. And some people were actually holding their hands up in worship.
Ooh,
and a lot of younger people were coming. So I was told that the education committee was concerned about that. and I guess officially I didn't get fired, but I basically was told that I needed to move on.
Yeah. Yeah, God's calling you to move on.
That's right. Well, at that point, I had lots of opportunity in the financial community. I was well known in the area. And several men from the church and otherwise came to me because they had heard me teach and asked if we would consider starting a church where we taught the Bible verse by verse. So we started in one of them was a dentist in town, and our dentist is, as a matter of fact, and we started meeting in his large home, large living room with about 30 people. And the first thing I did was I said, okay, I'm going to teach you the book of Mark and all the Gospels at once. And so I started Mark chapter 1, verse 1, and I added all the other Gospels in. So when we finished it, we had actually been through all 4 Gospels.
Did you do like a chronological kind of thing?
Yeah, a chronological thing, and some things are it gave me an opportunity to teach everything, because not only could I teach the Christmas story out of that, but I could also teach about end times and all of that. So it covered just about everything, so people knew what I believed about the Bible and about all of that. And that's
so it's a great way. That's good advice getting started on a church plant. I mean, it was very common back then and even today to start small in a home, have it grow from there, which is a great strategy for church planting to this day. I mean, we're doing a church planting network with Cultivate and stuff, and a lot of people are like, let's plan this all out and get a big building and do all this and that. And a lot of times we'll just say, you know what, probably the best advice we can give you is just go ahead and start a Bible study and start teaching and see what happens.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the Lord often will bless from there, and that's what happened, sounds like, there at Calvary Sarasota.
Yeah.
So what did you do? How did you become, like, I know you were at church where 2 or 3 are gathered, you got a pastor and everything. What led you to become like a church where you could say, here we are?
Well, we called ourselves right from the beginning Agape Christian Fellowship. A matter of fact, people would say fairly regularly that visit that really knew the Christian way of doing things, and they'd say, that's a lot to live up to. And so that's, we decided we were going to be a church right from the beginning.
Yeah, okay.
And so we named the church and everything we set up.
Right when you got started, it was...
Right when we got started, we set it all up legally. So some of the people that joined me, I was pretty well known in that community. And so a lot of the people were from pretty wealthy backgrounds, lawyers and doctors and stuff. And so we set up all of the legal stuff.
Good.
And so we just went from there, and we went from that location eventually to a school, and then to a Seventh-day Adventist church, because they met.
They do Saturdays.
Saturday.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. I mean, if people are listening here, always for these little tips and tricks, and that's Seventh-day Adventist. A lot of them don't want to work with other churches and stuff, but some are very, good about working with other churches.
We did that. Well, then we went to a Catholic school, a Catholic high school in Sarasota, and they had their eating facilities for the kids. That's where we had church. And that was great because we were allowed to use all of the rooms. So we had separate place to have a nursery, Sunday school for kids, and all of that. We were only about 80, 90 people when we moved there, but it really worked out because a lot of the people that would visit us were Catholics that thought we were a Catholic.
Oh, so you were part of the school. They thought you were part of the...
They thought we were part of the school.
Yeah.
And even some of the sisters, the Catholic sisters, would come and sit in the back and listen.
Okay.
And
as
a result,
Father
Carl? Well, sometimes they did, yes, but I tell them, no, don't do that. But then what would really happen is that at one point, when we were probably about 120 or 30 people, about 3/4 of the people had become Christians, and in some ways didn't even realize what had happened. They had come from the Catholic background, and then their families came along, and we did that for a long time until we finally purchased the building that we're in now. It was a failed denominational church.
Okay.
And
so it was set up as a church already?
No. Well, yes, but it was in a neighborhood that started in the 1960s in Sarasota, and it was their basic clubhouse and stuff in the middle of the neighborhood.
Okay.
But it was rat infested, and it was a mess. But we bought that and renovated it, and we've been there ever since.
It's a great location. And we're here, a lot of listeners, we're here on the west side of Florida. I just moved here. It's actually almost been 3 years. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I keep telling people, we moved here recently, about a year ago. No, it'll be 3 years pretty soon. But anyway, you've lived here for a long time.
Yeah, 1982 we came.
Yep. From Canada, right?
Yep.
Woo. My wife's Canadian, you know that.
Yes.
She's, so
yeah,
you guys can get together and sing the national anthem and everything.
That's right. I tried to forget it.
But having been there, it's a great, what I was saying is a great location where you are. So we're in the beautiful Sarasota is beautiful. I mean, this whole area, this
Yeah.
whole West Coast, south of Tampa. And I remember when we were on the mission field, I don't know if you remember this, but we came back for a furlough a long time ago and spoke at the church, shared a little bit, and, spent some time in Sarasota. That was our first time to the area. And so when we were thinking about moving here, I was thinking, I remember that's a nice area, Sarasota and Bradenton. And so, but you have a great place, great location in the middle of neighborhoods. I mean, there's neighborhoods all around you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. In fact, because before we started doing Sundays, we would come down and go to church and everything, and driving right through the neighborhoods. I mean, it's perfect. It's a great location.
Yeah, and we do door-to-doors several times a year at all of the whole neighborhood.
Yeah, good. So what's the secret to your success? How are we going to start a church and last not only last as long as you did, but your church, and this is what a lot of, I've been to a lot of churches, I've studied, church planting and all that, but at your church, it's really healthy. And I'm just going to testify to that as someone who's been there several times. You've got a great, healthy congregation of young and old mixture. A lot of times you have a church starts out 20, 30 years ago, starts out great, has a heyday, and then kind of dwindles, the church gets older, and then eventually dies out, that sort of thing. But you're not doing that. You've got a great worship team, and Pascal, the worship leader, great guy. I mean, how do we stay strong like that?
Well, I think the first thing, which is we started talking about this at the beginning, what you did, I think there has to be a commitment that this is where God put me, and I'm not leaving here unless God moves me, and everybody would agree with that.
Yep.
So when we started the church, I made a commitment that I would stay no matter what. And just a tiny story, I hope it doesn't sound wrong, but I think it's important. I was really well known in the financial community. And so when we started the church, I didn't need any money or anything or payment. I was doing well anyhow.
That's a unique situation.
It is unique, but it's like somebody being blessed by being supported as a church planter. And but I also was going away from time to time to do seminars for brokerage firms, and they paid me a lot of money to do that. And one day I came back, and I was treated so well by them that I thought, this is too much of a temptation. So I burned the boats in the harbor. I canceled my license. I let other firms know I don't do that anymore, and this is it full time. I'm going to trust in God to take care of me in the church. So I cut myself off from all. How
far in was that?
That was not too far in. It was probably not a year even.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I realized, I'm at this church, and as always is the case, there's problems here and there. But then I would fly off to some place, and they put me in a luxury hotel and give me a luxury car. And I'm thinking, well, this is what I deserve. And then
But for those who don't know, Calvary Chapel isn't that kind of a church model. I mean, you can go to some churches and get your luxury jet and car and all that.
No, not the Calvary Chapel. And so I decided that I just wanted to be part of the people, and that I wanted to teach them. Chuck Smith used to have a saying that he wanted to have the healthiest, best taught sheep and all that. Yep. And I kind of like that. Now, I didn't know about Chuck Smith then. We weren't at Calvary for quite a while. But I wanted to teach these people. I wanted them to understand the Bible the way I've been taught and discipled after I became a Christian. And that I was going to do that literally for the rest of my life unless God chose differently.
So it was that commitment that you made.
And therefore I become part of the people. Now, this is interesting, though. I took a course in church growth from seminary in California, and it was more like a sociological course about all the statistics about people and people groups and stuff like that. And they taught us at the course that a tribe was about 80 people in America. That's where a lot of people get started, all this kind of stuff. But also there was one statistic and I know all about statistics, but that proves true. You can try it yourself. Go and visit some churches. The average age of a congregation is within 10 years of the age of the pastor.
Yeah, I heard that. I think you might have told me that, but that's interesting.
So I determined right from the beginning that we would make sure that I never got old in my thinking.
Yeah.
I can't do anything.
How old are you?
I'm 76.
76, okay.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that I took care of myself, that I really was part of the people, and that I continued to learn and grow and understand what was going on in the people's lives so that they would be like healthy sheep, bring other sheep.
Yeah, and you do, I'm just going to interject this here because another fascinating thing to me about Pastor Carl is you ride your bike a lot. And I'm not talking about, don't think about just a bicycle or a beach cruiser kind of thing. It's a road bike, like the real deal.
150 miles a week.
150 miles a week on your bike.
Yeah.
And so whenever someone says, is Pastor Carl, is he an older pastor? I'll be like, no. Can you ride 150 miles a week? And you've invited me to go ride with you, but I'm not going to do it. I can't. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I've tried to. I see our body as something that we're responsible for. God gave us these bodies. We're going to live in eternal bodies, and I'm looking forward to that. And I know that there's bicycles in the 1,000-year reign, especially because of the wheel within a wheel in Ezekiel. That's the back of a road bike. But
Interesting.
I've tried to be part of the people in the church. And I think that some pastors fall for that separation. There should be no, I'm a servant.
Yeah.
I'm not the boss. I'm not the CEO.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I've said occasionally in a sermon that I tried to start a cult, but nobody would do what I said. And
I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. But so as a result, if you come to our church right now and stay between services, what you'll see is dozens and dozens of little kids running around, jumping on the seats, knocking over the microphone sometime on the stage. These young families, and I do all I can to talk to their kids, get down on the floor with them. And so we do have older people, but really the church average age is way, way down from my age.
Yeah, that's an amazing, I think that's so important to really come into where the people are. And if you're not there, like I'm realizing this too. I'm 45 and my youngest is just turned 18. She's going to go to England for a little while for Christian school over there. So we're empty nesters now. And I'm starting to feel the disconnect between the younger generation and everything. But there is a way, what you're saying is there's a way to mentally stay in step with the congregation.
Yeah, there is. And that's why you have to be a reader. Readers are leaders and leaders are readers.
That's right. That was something you shared at the conference. You said, and I wrote it down here because I loved it, the greatest gift you can give your listeners is to keep learning and growing and changing.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, so that's great. Yeah.
And so, and you have to, when I'm putting a sermon together, we have an online audience. And I've had people ask me occasionally, how many people are online? I don't know. I don't want to know. That's not who I'm preaching to. I am, but that's not, when I prepare my sermon, I'm thinking about the people in front of me that I meet every day. And I'll acknowledge the camera and say, if you're online and all of this kind of thing. But that's not my audience. I'm not trying to develop the biggest online audience.
Yeah, that's a great point. I haven't really thought about it that way because I taught a couple of weeks ago about the importance of just one, because we're in Acts. We're back in Acts now. And you know the story of Philip, where he's part of a revival in Samaria. And thousands are getting saved. And then all of a sudden the Lord says, I want you to go into the desert and just talk to one person. And that point kind of struck home with me of, you know, we're talking to the person right in front of us. And I never made the connection between that online, because we all want to reach, you know, the millions of people online. But who is it that's sitting right in front of us?
Yes, and so since we don't have any children, I mean, we do, but they are in California and Seattle and places like that, but we don't have any children at home. We've been empty nesters for a long time. I arrive at the church pretty well before almost anybody else on Sunday, and I seldom leave before 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon because I want to be talking to people, sitting down with them, having more than just hello, how are you time. And really getting to know people and being available to people.
Yeah.
And also letting people know that I'm the pastor and I work hard at what I do. I try to, but I'm not perfect. And I want people to know they can question me. A young man came to me this week who's new to the church. I think he was really surprised. And he wasn't sure about something I said. So he came up to me and he was very tentative. I'm guessing he was in his 30s, and he had written all these notes down. He said, "You said this and this, and that doesn't make any sense to me. How can you say that?" And first thing I said to him was, "Wow, that's really incredible that you noticed that." And then I explained why. And then I said, "Listen, I see you're taking a lot of notes. Please feel free to talk to me. I've had people like you come to me and change my mind about something, so I want to hear from you." And you could just see him sort of, "Oh, okay." I mean, I want to get that. I want to be close enough to the people that they know who I am.
Yep. And when they get to know you, they know that they can come and talk to you about
They
those
know they
kind
can
of
come
things.
and talk to me.
That's rare in this day and age. I mean, to have a pastor that is not lording it. I mean, the Bible says it, don't lord over the people.
Yes.
But be an example to the flock, and that's what you're talking about.
Well, you might remember, I think I said during the church thing, beware of becoming a green room pastor.
Oh, yeah.
And Pastor Chuck taught me that. I mean, I would go to Costa Mesa, and every time I went, quite a few times, I was always able to talk to him.
Yeah.
And so some people would say, well, you can do that if your church is 100 or 200 or something, but you can't do that if you got thousands. Pastor Chuck did.
Yeah.
And I tried to respect his time, but his eyes never moved away from me to all the other people waiting to talk.
That's right. Yeah. And that's my pastor, Pastor Ray Bentley, who's passed away now, was the same way.
Yeah.
And I was amazed because he had a huge church in San Diego, and I was one of the pastors, one of 15 or 16 pastors on staff. And that was when we came back from the mission field. And I was so surprised by that very thing that he would do, and I'm sure he learned it from Pastor Chuck as well, is he was there till the last person wanted to talk to him and left. He would just sit after the service, people would talk, and he would be there for them.
Yeah.
And we would kind of think, well, don't you need to go and rest or do it? But he had that mentality of, I'm not on stage, like you said, the green room pastor. I want to be able to be accessible and available.
Yep.
Wow. Young church planners are starting out, Pastor Carl, and they're eager to get going and doing this. What would if you could say one or two things that would really get them started on the right trajectory, besides what you've already shared? I mean, that's gold in and of itself. What would you say to them?
I would say that they need to make sure that they have goals. Now, you have to be careful about goals. There's different ways to set goals. I have a seminar I like to do on goal setting. Goals can box you in and keep you from going in the right direction if you don't know how to do them properly. So before you set a goal, you have to have a purpose. And don't try to be too spiritual about the purpose. Say, what do I want my life to represent? What are people going to say to me at or not to me, but going to say about me at the memorial service?
Yeah.
And so if you have a purpose that you're going to constantly be moving around in different ways, and some of it has to be very specific. So my purpose when we started the church was to make sure I really taught the people well, and also that I would be there for them no matter what for the rest of my life, unless God moved me. And we've already talked about that, but I think that's important.
That's good.
And to continue to learn and grow. People come to me today. The church has been around a long time, and so over that time, lots of people have left and moved away or went to another church. Well, now we have a lot of people almost every month, 2 or 3 people come back to the church that haven't been at the church for a very long time. And they always say approximately the same thing. They'll say, wow, you've really changed. You know, and then if I feel comfortable, and not too scared to what they might say, I'll say, how have I changed? And most of the time they'll say, well, you seem to know so much more, and the sermons are, the way you're preaching is you seem to be a lot more.
Do you feel like you've changed, though?
Yeah, I have changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was laughing because I was thinking it was probably just that they've probably changed, and they didn't like before. Now that coming back, having matured, they have come to like. For example, the teaching style. I mean, a lot of people would rather have a 20-minute inspirational message.
Yes.
And then when they come and hear us talk for 45 or more minutes, it's hard for a lot of people to deal with. But anyway, I interrupted you. Sorry.
But you also have to develop good relationships within the church. And you have to take some risks in those relationships. I always try to have at least 1 or 2 men in the church that I can say almost anything to. I meet with a man every Tuesday afternoon.
Good advice.
An older man, actually, than me, and that's saying something. I
bet he can't ride his bike as far as you can, though.
No, he can't, but his 2 new knees won't let him.
Yeah.
But at any rate...
I don't know of many 20-year-olds that can ride their bike as far as you can. That's the thing.
Well, there's some really great... We've got every kind of bike rider in the church.
Okay.
Plus, we have a new cult in the church.
Oh, yeah?
Have I told you?
You're not the leader, though, because you don't know how to... They won't follow you.
The new cult?
Yeah. Or are you the leader?
No, my wife has been brainwashed into it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called pickleball.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got some of those here, too.
We even have a part in our website.
You'll definitely, if someone plays pickleball, you'll hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell people I don't beat my wife. I went out and played pickleball the other day, and the score was 11-5. I was the 5. But at any rate, you have to make sure that you have relationships with people in the church, that you take risks on that. You'll be betrayed. You'll have a relationship where somebody will lie about you or something.
Yeah.
You must be like, in a sense, like Jesus at that point. I'm always blown away when I talk about the sermon this week was about, I called it Communion 101. And at the Passover, the last Passover, it says Jesus on the night he was betrayed. And of course, Judas was right there. And he treated Judas just as well as he treated everybody else. I would have used some of my old judo moves and got Judas out of there as quick as I could. But you have to be really developing relationships with the people in the church.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then the church will grow around those relationships.
Yeah.
But you still have all kinds of problems and troubles and that type of thing. It won't be easy. Yeah, and you must be willing to accept that there is an enemy called the devil, and if you're going to start a church, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You're going to run into the
difficulties.
Oh, yeah.
What's the most difficult thing? We're running out of time here.
Okay.
Time has just flown by. But what's the most difficult thing that you've faced in your just the church plant, but throughout the church that you've pastored there?
2 things. 1995, we had a church split that you could write a volume about.
Ooh.
It was one of the meanest, most terrible church splits ever. And literally, there were times, I've never been suicidal, but there were for many, many times when I was serious, I'd get on my knees before bed and say, Lord, everybody would be better off if please take my life. I don't want to go on anymore. Yeah. And but I got up and went on, and it was incredibly difficult, unbelievably hard, and also the betrayal of friends.
Yeah.
There were 2 particular friends over all the decades who I have been super close to, who totally betrayed me and lied about me, and I can't exaggerate the hurt of that, but you can't allow that to stop you.
Yeah.
You have to keep going. And the first time it happened, I said to the one assistant pastor I had at the time, Dave was his name, I said, Dave, I'll never trust another man again as long as I live.
Wow.
and ever. I'll never be put in that position. And I was really strong about it. And he got out. He was in front of my desk. He came behind me. He's a bigger man, his big hands, and he started massaging my neck. And he says, I want to tell you something. He says, I'm your friend. I will never betray you as long as I live or you live. He's older than me. He's 80 years old now, and he was visiting from the Carolinas, where he's retired in now. And he said to me when he left about a few days ago, he says, you remember what I said to you a long, long time ago? And I said, what are you talking about? The time that I was massaging your neck? Oh, yeah. Well, he says, I'm still your friend.
That's amazing.
So you have to be willing to persevere through those extremely difficult times.
I love that. Great word for especially young church planters getting into the ministry. It's going to be difficult, but would you change anything? I mean, do you love it, or do you wish you would have stuck with the stockbroker stuff?
Oh, no.
I'm flying around the world.
I am absolutely, I can't believe God has let me do all this.
Yeah.
I can't believe
I feel
it.
the same way.
Yeah. And plus I've got the greatest wife in the world, and that helps a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pastor Carl, I want to ask if you'll just come back on another episode sometime, because I got a lot more questions and you've got a lot more answers, I feel like, and wisdom to share. But thanks for coming in today. Welcome. It's been awesome. I know it's many are going to be blessed and encouraged by the talk we had today. So
thank you.
Thanks again.